was
Yeah.
at the state at the time. I went and said contract yesterday.
Then I guess you gotta go to triple
I don't know what's next, to be honest. I've never seen it.
AAA.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, next meetings.
And one was in my junk email box. I didn't see it. So that one's on the next one too. Oh yeah, that's right.
He had mentioned our Chinas.
Filters are a wonderful thing. Yeah. Anytime you're ready.
Oh, you're good?
Yep.
Great. So please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, welcome everyone. We have a couple announcements. The first one is that it is Arbor Day coming up, and we have a proclamation. And I'll just read the bottom part. Now therefore, I, Brian C. Smith, Mayor of the Village of Irvington, do hereby proclaim April 28, 2023 as Arbor Day in the Village of Irvington. So I think there's actually events planned for that day. I mean, tree plantings?
Yeah, we do. I think it's 10 a.m. on the 28th, but we're just confirming it. So
10 a.m.
we'll announce it at the next meeting next week.
Perfect.
So.
Secondly, I just had the honor of swearing in the new officers for the Irvington Fire Department before this meeting. They are, it's funny, they're all familiar faces that are coming around again. The chief is going to be James Ruffler. I think this has to be probably the fifth time he's been the big chief. Is that a good guess? I don't know. Then the first assistant chief is Anthony Tarracone. He probably has as many as James. David Dowd is the second assistant chief. He's at least coming around for the second time now. And then Dan Billings, the previous chief, has gone back to lieutenant. Andrew Lamberti is repeating as lieutenant, and Steve Manchicati and Joe Trauma are also repeating as lieutenants. So we appreciate them, congratulate them all, and thank them for being willing to serve. As I think it was Anthony, Chief Tarracone said, it's really hard to run our families and our wives, and I agree completely. So thank you not just to the new officers, but to their families as well. And then on a much lighter note, if the Islanders win tonight, this will be the first time since 1994 that all 5 winter New York sports teams will be in playoffs. So it's an exciting night. Go Islanders, I guess.
I'm an Islander fan, so go out.
All right, perfect. So I will quickly get to the correspondence. Luckily, most of it is part of the public hearing, so I won't have to read all of them and have the same gist. But we had a couple others that were not related to anything else on the agenda. First one was for Terry Masterson, previous deputy mayor, and he was a trustee as well. Basically, he's asking if we can, he sent a copy of the letter he sent to the Enterprise asking to bring back the Ardell Warnock Award, which was given out for, I don't know, a decade or so.
About that.
Give or take.
Yep.
Which basically celebrates, people's contributions, volunteer contributions to the village. So it's something we have been talking about bringing back anyway. So it's a good reminder. So we will take that under advisement. Next up is from Kathy Kaufman, basically pointing out that there's a civilian oversight of law enforcement program coming up for Office for Westchester Communities. We were aware of this. I think we have a representative from the police department's attending.
Yes.
And I think we're hopefully get maybe a trustee to attend, but I think it's over there.
Actually, Kathy made us aware of it, so yeah, we will have a representative.
Great. Next up is from the Irvington Historical Society. It was actually addressed to the folks at Bill Lawaro. They were talking about how they are supportive of using a historic building for a new purpose to keep them up and running, but they're also concerned about the actual the preservation of the building, the physical preservation of the building, less so than the uses, and they want to make sure that that's part of our discussion, that the preservation is at the top of the list of items, not just noise and things like that. It's not just my thick New York accent.
No, it's probably on our end, but, because I listened to the planning board last week and it was fine, so that's, yeah, I don't know what caused that.
I'll move on to the next letter that is related to the budget, which is from Maria and Peter Agabino. This is about preserving the tree on their property from planning board application. We have received previous letters on this. This time they actually have a letter from a arborist. I assume this has already been passed on to the planning board. It looked like it was originally addressed to Caesar, the planning board now.
They all got copies of
They
it.
got copies of it.
Yeah, do you know if like the planning board considered their arborist's input? I know that they had looked at it,
Well,
months ago.
Yeah. I don't know, I don't remember whether they had gotten the arborist report before they gave the approval, but they did get questions from the Agavinos about whether the tree was being adequately protected. And in response to, so the letter was sent to Suzanne Nolan, the village's landscape architect, and she was confident that tree protection measures were good. I guess, again, that was before the Davy letter. So I did speak with her again in the last few days. Spoke with her last week, in the last few days, and she said that she pointed out to me, and I have copies if anybody wants to see it. That there's a ISA is the International Society of Arboriculture, or IAS it is, and they have a booklet called Managing Trees During Construction, and the number one recommendation for for managing the trees during construction is to lay plywood over wood chips, which is exactly what she recommended. A landscape architect requires a huge amount of training, more than an arborist. And one of the things she's got that you do as a landscape architect is study the standards of arboriculture. So she knew about that, and she's confident that the protection's right. And in fact, that's what the IAS, which is what's certified the person who wrote the letter on behalf of the arborist who wrote the letter on behalf of for Agavinos. That's his society, and it's his society that recommends that measure. And the reason for the plywood, just quickly, over the wood chips is if you just have wood chips and you walk on them, it compacts them, it presses them down. But if you got plywood on it, it distributes it so they don't get packed down the same way. So I know it seems like, is it going to make it more impervious, but in fact it doesn't.
Great. Well, thank you, an update. And I just wanted to make sure that, and I mean, I think everybody here, I shouldn't say everybody here, I know everyone here, everyone on the planning board wants to protect the tree as well. So
Yeah.
it's not like, there's something against this tree. So I know everyone wants to do everything they can. So
No.
I'm sure the building department will monitor it and make sure that it's being taken care of as we move forward. But that's it. There's 42 other letters related to the budget that I will address when we get to the budget portion. Yes, anything there, but if not, I will open up the floor to public comments not related to the budget. Please, just mind coming up to the microphone. Hopefully they can hear you at home.
Unless maybe they can hear me.
I don't think so. I think the microphone is what picks it up.
Thank you.
Board members, my name is Lori Friedman. I live at 101 Valley View Road. And I wanted to say I'm a member of the International Dark Sky Association. And starting April 15th is the International Dark Sky Week that will hold events around the world to help raise awareness of light pollution and provide solutions to protect dark skies while enjoying good outdoor lighting. In the United States and Europe, 99% of people live under a light polluted sky. Globally, it is 1/3 of the entire population, yet few are aware of its impact. The damage of artificial light at night goes far beyond blocking our view of the stars and disrupting the migratory patterns of wildlife, disorienting birds, insects, and plants, and significant implications on human quality of life warrant far more attention and are often overlooked or falsely written off as the cost of keeping a community safe, despite a lack of evidence that more light is better. Light pollution is growing worse by 10% each year. I want to bring to your attention the lights at the new concession stand at the high school track. The local law number 3 of 2020, entered by the Board of Trustees of the Village of Irvington, Section 3, 224, 72.c, amended that exterior lighting shall be dark sky compliant and that all fixtures shall be full cutoff with a vacancy sensor, but the lights installed at the school are not dark compliant. Poor design or excessive night lighting harms the environment in many ways, including energy waste, visual impairment, environmental consequences, and loss of the starry sky. The 5 principles of responsible outdoor lighting developed by the Illumination Engineering Society and the IDA, International Dark Sky Association, are useful to have a clear purpose and to consider how it will impact the area. Targeted using shielding and point fixtures downward, full cutoff to avoid light trespass. 3, low light level, light should be no brighter than necessary. 4, controlled, use timers or motion detectors instead of remaining lit all night, which the lights at the school are lit all night at the concession stand. And the color, use warmer color, limit blue-violet light. IDA recommends no more than 3,000 kelvins to reduce the brightness and glare. Please review the lighting at the new high school concession stand and have them improve or replace the fixtures they installed. And I have pictures of the lights that I
Unfortunately,
sent to you.
you don't actually have to. You're kind of in the wrong place.
Okay.
The school actually, we don't have any authority over the school. New York State does. So I suggest you actually, and I think everyone here would probably agree with you, and that's why we adopted that lighting ordinance.
Right.
You should probably talk to them at a Board of Education at a meeting. Since we don't actually have any authority, we can send them an email, but it's just a suggestion from us.
But they are part of the town.
They are, but they're excluded by law from, they don't improve any of their building or lighting or anything. We don't have any authority over them at all.
They use our police department, they use our fire department, and
They
they are
do.
part of our town, and they should need to comply with the laws
But
of
they
our town.
The laws simply don't apply. Similarly, we don't have to follow our own laws either, which is an odd thing, but this one is much more black and white, where the school, the only person, when they have plans, they don't send them to our building department or our planning board, they go right to New York State, and that's where it gets approved. So I'm hopeful that they'll be, considerate of your concerns, but
Well, they are in a residential area, there's homes all around the school, and those lights are, I don't know if you've driven over to the school and see the lights that are going on there and what they build, but it's really an intrusion to
Yeah.
the neighbors.
I believe their meetings are the first and third Tuesday.
Or Tuesdays, yeah.
Yeah, I know it's definitely Tuesdays, but if you go to the Irvington Union Free School District website, you can definitely find out. And you can also send
Okay.
a letter if you don't want
I will do
to
that.
speak again. But
Thank you so
But we
much.
appreciate it.
They have an
Appreciate
open
that.
speaking like this at
They
their
do.
meetings as well.
I'm sorry?
They have an open time for people to speak just like this, so you
Okay.
could do exactly what you just did.
I'll write a letter. I think
For
also
that.
Gary Knowles is part of the lighting. He had put blockers up when they first built the school in 2003 because the lights were shining right in my house, and he put blockers on that. But now the lights that they put on the concession stand are
Yep. they
really
might.
need to be
The school
addressed.
board would have the authority, so you
Yeah.
could go to the meeting of the school board and they would have the ability to do something about it, so. you could-
I'll do that. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks so
for
much.
coming. Anybody else?
No budget. Tomorrow's a very sad day for our department. After 43 years of serving the village, it'll be Chris DePaoli's last day tomorrow. Although we'll be bringing him back part-time, it is an end of, between him and his dad, well, probably close to 70 years of service to the village, so.
Not including the fire department.
Not including the fire department, two-time chief, so if you see Chris on the street, we'll give him a high five and thank him for all he did.
Absolutely. Thank you. didn't realize his last day was this week.
Yeah, neither did I. I thought it was Friday.
Anybody else? Otherwise, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Anyone have any questions on the consent agenda? Otherwise, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda. If I can have a second. All in favor? All right, now we're up to the public hearing for the 2023-2024 operating budget. I'll make a motion to open the public hearing. If I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are open. So I don't start with an overview, Larry.
Yeah, I'll give an overview. Okay. So our tentative budget reflects a tax rate of 7.8430 per thousand of assessed valuation. So this is a decrease of 0.1279, which is down 1.6% from last year, but this doesn't necessarily mean that there will be a tax decrease for individual homeowners. The town of Greenberg does assessments, so assessed valuations have increased approximately 6.7% from the prior year, and only 1.42% of this is due to new construction. So that means if an average property owner had a assessed valuation of $1,020,000 and their assessment didn't change, their taxes for the year would decrease by approximately $130. However, if that same property's assessment increased by 5%, their village taxes would end up increasing by approximately $270. So in total, the tentative budget has a tax levy increase of $758,192, which is 4.97% more than last year. The budget is New York State tax cap compliant. New York State provides a calculation for how much the taxes can be raised. The New York State Controller calculated inflation at 8.06%. However, we still need to stay within this 2% tax base growth rate with 1.42% that also gets calculated in for new construction. So this posed extreme difficulties for our departments because with rising costs, everyone needed to still stay within this amount. The total expenses increased by approximately 1.24 million. Salaries make up 33% of the budget. Included is a 2.5% police contract increase, which is effective on June 1st. The CSEA union contract expires at the end of this fiscal year, so union and non-union increases are included in contingency, are still subject to future collective bargaining. Also, in line with salaries, we have $72,000 in savings from retirements. There's 2 retirements in DPW and 1 retirement in the Parks Department, which Joe just mentioned. So long-time retiree positions are being replaced by newer employees in lower tiers, which will come in at lower salaries. Also included in the budget is $52,500 for a mid-year addition of an officer in the police department, a detective promotion, and a sergeant promotion. These changes will help fulfill the increased demands of the detective division. Other big items are health insurance premium. That's actually our biggest increase of about $369,000. So in January of 2023, the rate for a family plan increased by 14.91%, which is even more than was anticipated in last year's budget. And this year's budget provides for an additional 12% increase in January of 2024.
So these percentage increases, along with several policies being added due to new hires to replace retirements, is what is leading to this increase. We also have about a $308,000 increase in our debt service due to an increase in interest rates from 0.4% to just over 4%. And retirement, it's about a $101,000 increase due to pension rates, which are dependent on the state's pension fund. There's also utility increases of about $52,000 and general liability insurance increases of about $37,000. Then on a more positive note, we have revenue increases which offset the expense increases. We increased building permit revenues by $180,000, sales tax revenue by $150,000, interest and earnings revenue by $85,000, and cell tower rental revenues by $18,000. A total of $226,000 has been appropriated of fund balance, which is an additional $51,000 from last year. This includes $28,000 for a part-time laborer, which is our retired foreman, to come back and train the 2 groundskeepers. At the end of last year, the unassigned fund balance was about $6.5 million. So we found that it was appropriate to appropriate some of that fund balance. And then also there's a 5% water and sewer rate increase, and this is due to the rising cost of water purchased from New York City. Additional $10,000 for supplies, $10,000 for emergency services, professional fees, software meter reading, and a new backflow program.
Great.
That's all.
Yeah, and then, I think I'll set the initial background was, inflation when we started this was probably around 7%, and now it's only 5%. I think it was today's update. So, the cost of everything is kind of going up 5 to 7%. And one of the few times that our salaries weren't, slightly higher than inflation, they were obviously under some, but things like oil, electricity, obviously were all much more expensive. And we also, at the same time, and we're having those increases, every resident's having those increases, so we want to be responsive to that and not kind of pile on. It's just saying it is what it is, and we'll just increase. So this was, probably one of the more difficult budgets I've had probably since 2009 when I first got on the board, which that year we had cut, probably $500,000 or so. So we did ask the departments to look to cut where they could, creatively. And, the thing is that, I feel like we run fairly lean budgets as it is. So there's not, once you start cutting, you get very close to the bone. So every cut, whether it's 5,000 or 50,000, hurts. And it hurts, pretty much everywhere. And the requests for additional funding were all, well thought out, and, not extravagant for sure. I would say that most of the additional increases were either denied or cut back somewhat. So, I feel like we were trying to be as responsive to, department heads who, frankly, all year focus on their budgets and saving money. So it's not, it makes it harder to do. If you're kind of free-flowing and you have to tighten it up, it's easier. That's why in some ways in 2009, I think it was a little easier because it was the first time in a long time there had been, real cuts, where now it's been, moderate increases or flat for the most part, probably for the last 10 years. And our tax rates have reflected that. So, while the headline tax rate is, we're decreasing it by 1.6%, it obviously doesn't tell the story because our assessments went up. While it's always nice that all of our houses are reformed, it doesn't really help if, there isn't true new building. If there's new building, then the costs get passed to other people, to new people that move into town, and, the pie gets bigger. This is just, the pie basically got bigger, but it's not new pieces of the pie, I guess would be the way I put it. So, while it would have been easiest to say, hey, we did a great job, and typically this has been where our measuring stick was, so if we were down 1.6%, we would have had a little party and we would have approved this budget already. This year it definitely didn't tell the story. So you can see the assessed valuations, while they'd always been kind of stable, jumped, fairly considerably this year, and that's really the difference. If you change the numerator and the denominator, you're going to have weird things happen. So we definitely took that into consideration. And really, if you look at kind of the top total expenditures, that's really where the story is, and that's what we tried to keep down as much as possible. I think we're very lucky, and it's not really luck because we work hard on it, but having the healthy fund balance, we consider it a rainy day fund, but to me, it's really, that's taxes we've collected in the past and either, over collected or didn't spend. Maybe we had additional revenue we weren't expecting, which often happens, or, costs came in lower than we estimated because we're always fairly conservative. So, our fund balance, even though we've been using it, fairly consistently, because we do consider that not an accounting trick, but really returning people's money that we've already collected, or revenue we've already collected, or savings we've had, and giving it back to the taxpayer. So we definitely think that that's appropriate as well. The flip side of that coin is if you use too much of it, you create a hole for next year's budget, and that's makes things more difficult. So we don't want to overuse it, but we kind of want to use an appropriate amount. I think that's where we kind of landed with that number. Obviously up a little bit from last year, but not up dramatically. So I think that's kind of the overall thing. We did get 42 letters talking about how wonderful the O'Hara Nature Center is, and CJ is, and the rec department are. And I know I speak for the board when I say we all agree 100%. I think we've been unbelievably impressed with the impact CJ's had, not just on the O'Hara Nature Center, but on the village overall, for the reputation of the village. It's just been a resource that we didn't know we need, that now we couldn't live without. But I think, part of it is, I think that, actually I asked Larry, I don't know if you can put some
I don't think I can.
you don't think you can?
Yeah, no, I don't have that down here. Sorry.
No worries. So I asked Larry to put together the budget just for the Nature Center over the last, 5 years, or 4 years, from 2019. And in 2019, the entire budget for the Nature Center is about $52,000. In 2020, it went up to about $111,000. 2021, it went up to $147,000. Last year, it went up to $165,000. And this year, we're proposing to increase it to $173,000, almost $174,000. So while we didn't approve the $5,000 increase for special events at the Nature Center, we haven't cut the Nature Center budget, because I think we all do realize how important it is. We take great pride in how great it looks. Not just CJ, but I also think that the landscaping up there and the planning that goes into the landscaping, it's not just to look nice either. It's educational, obviously. There's you can learn a lot from all the different gardens up there. The deer proofing and all. There's so many things going on up there, and it's all great. And we have a lot of momentum, and we didn't want to stop that momentum. But we also don't think that not approving the extra $5,000 will stop that momentum, at least not when we made those cuts. Since that was really the only item that was brought up from the public, that was why I felt we really wanted to address that. But I want everyone to know that we value the Nature Center for sure. We think CJ is as great as everyone else does, if not more so. My son is one of the guys that's volunteered up there in high school for the last couple of years, and he's gotten a lot out of that as well. So I definitely know firsthand how great it is. I can walk there from my house, so especially during COVID, I spent a lot of time in those woods. So that's kind of my take on that. But I don't know if anybody else wants to talk about that particular or the budget overall and the process. There's obviously a lot to talk about with the budget, and this is probably the single most important thing we do all years.
I guess I want to say something. I think it's very difficult, to look at different things and how to cut. It always is very difficult to do that. I appreciate all of the letters. I think it's important to clarify what you just clarified, which is that additional amount. I think that is important because I think overall, the commitment to the nature center and the work that CJ is doing there, I think we all recognize, and, you know, it's clear that the town is really appreciative of that. So I think it's important to note that it's a continuing commitment of the board. So I don't want people to think that it's, we don't think it's important, or, you know, or there's some change. I think we have a lot of competing things. I think it's very difficult when we look at sort of what you've done in the past and even looking forward, right? We might have some challenges about how do we incorporate new things that we want to do and how that may change budgets that have been in place for some time. So I just think we have to be creative, and, you know, we have certain goals as a board and things that are important, and I think where we spend our money is going to reflect that, right? And I think we have challenges of a tough budget year. So I think it's important to just to highlight that the commitment is there. And it's demonstrated by where we put the money.
Yeah, and I think, you know, to me, the biggest takeaway from Kate's presentation is that we have a 15% increase in healthcare. It's not all the lines, but it's, you know, that's just, you know, your hands are so tied. And then you had the stock market was down, which then affects the New York State pension, also ties your hands, you know. So we came in the hole before we looked at anything. You know, we knew we were going to have to make up some money. We've been lucky, too, that we've had so much building in the building department that we're able to raise that much. You know, and the sales tax has been strong. I guess there is a direct correlation with inflation and sales tax going up as well. But, you know, all that money does come from our taxpayers as well. So it's not, you know, it's not just like found money, but it does help our budgets for sure.
One thing, at the meeting when we began discussing the budget, that was, I guess, in March, right? We kind of came to a conclusion that was unpleasant, which is that in order to stay under the cap, which we all committed, all five of us, that we wanted to do, there was going to be no way to avoid cutting some programs at different, wherever that agency is, whatever it was. There was something that was going to be impossible to whether it's adding new or cutting what exists, whatever the case may be. We were not going to be able to have as much programming as we wanted in the village, regardless of the department. And that's something that I think is really hard to accept as a board member. I don't like that. But the math is the math. If we're going to stay under the cap, then we have, in order to get to the cap, we need to lower expenses somewhere. And when we talked about it in that meeting's video, I can go back and look. It is the way the numbers are. It's not, you can't avoid. You know, it's going to, like, that's kind of what Brian said about bone. You know what I mean? There's no way just to cut fat. You really have to get into actually get into bone. So that was the most painful thing for me, was realizing that after the meeting last time. And I just wanted to pass that along to everyone else who's looking on the outside and wondering why we're doing what we're doing.
Well, while we've thrown a lot of accolades to the O'Hara Nature Center and to CJ, you know, and to Joe for coming up with suggestions and cuts, we did recognize that there would need to be cuts made. I know Larry and Katie, in meeting with all the departments, you know, I reiterated that, and I don't know, I wasn't privy to the conversations, but I do know that everyone was told it was going to be a difficult situation. I want to add additional accolades to Joe, because from what I can see on the budget and on all department budgets, Joe is the only one who's actually made cuts on salaries, on positions, as well as on programming. And I know those were difficult things to do, and I think he was a good soldier in terms of taking to heart what his assignment was. And I think it's been difficult for everyone to look at. I'm not sure every department worked as hard at being responsive to the requests from Larry and Katie as Rick did.
Yeah, so just gonna say a few things. First, thanks everyone for the public comment who wrote in on their letters. It's great to get that feedback, and I'm glad people are, you know, involved, and it's great to hear all this great feedback about the Nature Center. Like, as you know, we all agree. Brian and Arlene and Larry spoke really well to that. Obviously, the programming is great. Like everyone here, I use it all the time with my kids. It's fantastic. You know, I love it. I know that if we had more money to give, they would put it to more use and have better programs and better events. And, you know, sort of echoing what Larry just said, I do also want to thank Joe for his hard work on the budget. I know it wasn't easy. I think he was incredibly thoughtful about some of the cuts in terms of rec, in terms of, you know, planning it so that the cuts were made in a way which hopefully will have the least impact. Obviously, there are a lot of events we wish we could have, that like the block party that we won't have this year, hopefully next year, but a lot of the existing stuff that we've come to depend on, including the Nature Center programming, you know, we will still have. And so, yeah, again, I wish it was a better year. I think, at least on the Nature Center, that seems to be in pretty good shape as far as there haven't been any cuts to last year's funding. We weren't able to include additional 5K. If someone is looking at the budget online, I know it is a little confusing, so I just want to call it out that there's one line that looks like it was cut, trail events, and that was just recategorization. That money wasn't cut, it was moved to a different line, and so that isn't a cut. I just wanted to call that out. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, went to repairs and maintenance.
Right.
I can open up the public there for this.
Yeah.
Heather's please.
Thank you. I've always been uncomfortable when I have to speak and I can't be behind with you, but I have to in this situation. First, I don't agree that every letter was about the Nature Center. Maybe the other ones didn't make it in, but I know there were a lot of people who understand the impact of what we had to cut will have on our department, and that's never really been represented in any of the meetings we've had. It's also very hard for me representing the wide range of people we do, and in my email to all of you yesterday, you know, I'm trying to get you to look at the size of what we are as far as a department. It's not just a rec and parks department, and why we have what we have is because over the years, we were asked to take on the things. We didn't volunteer or jump up for them, but we were ready to help for them. And then, you know, you're saying that it was difficult to make cuts, and I know it's difficult to make cuts. Don't you think I had a list of things I wanted to ask for? That wasn't the directive from our staff. Our administrative staff told us, here's your target, please do the best you can. How come basically we're the only ones that went deep into making close to the cuts we were asked? And the money that you don't see is all of the part-time staff that I've had to eliminate, that now my full-time staff has to pick up on. We can't take anything on at this point. If you want us to help with something else, we can. And how do I face and tell people that we were asked to cut in the 60s? We basically did that if you look at our budget, even though the savings was only 35. And the library was asked to cut 27 and got a $60,000 increase. How do I explain that to people who are supportive of the rec department? We opened up a tennis registration Tuesday. We have 40 people on the waiting list. Okay, we're 2 months from the first day of day camp. We've collected $225,000 in revenue, and we already have 215 kids signed up for camp, which means we're going to go way over what our projections were. Teenscape filled up in less than 10 minutes. Okay, people want what we offer. We can't give it to them if we don't have the ability to staff it. Okay, we also bring in $700,000 in revenue. And there are other departments that run programs who don't bring in a third of that. So I know you tried, but I think we took the big hit here and everything I represent. You know, again, if something comes up and you need help with an event, it doesn't always happen for free. If I've got to bring 2 guys in to help me, that comes out of my budget, okay? And that doesn't happen once or twice, it happens a lot. Look, we want to help. We want to produce as much as we can for you. But this year you've made it very, very difficult. And please understand, the $5,000 for the Nature Center, the letters weren't about that. That was parents who were grateful for what they've had up there, just thinking something was being taken away. The mayor read the difference in the numbers. Well, during those times in those years, you went from part-time to a full-time staff person. which is a major part of that. You've also increased activities and programs and maintenance and supplies and equipment. So Nature Center couldn't be where it is if the budget didn't grow. And we're not slowing down, okay? We're working with Larry and our grant writer looking for more grants. So, we're doing what we can, but if you look at the whole budget and you look and you can't see it on a summary page, you have to know what's in the budget and see the difference in the lines. And again, I still have not had an answer from anyone on how the library got from being asked to make cuts to getting a $60,000 increase, and I'm cutting 2 hours off of a kid who makes $15 an hour to try to get this budget to work. It's frustrating. I know you understand that, but I really felt I needed to say that. I also want to point out that I'm grateful that the chair of the Irvington Woods Committee, Zoe Hamilton, and the chair of RPAC, Rick Rizzullo, are both here tonight to show support. So I regret that I have to be on this side, but I'm tired of being on the phone trying to explain things to people who want more from us, and I can't give it right now.
Thank you, Joe.
We appreciate you coming here and speaking.
Yeah, thank you, Joe.
Can I say something?
60,000.
Yeah, can I say something? I think that as a board, I think it's important that if we're cutting budgets, right? I think that we understand that you can't keep necessarily the same level of activity. I think that goes without saying, right? So I think, to me, that makes sense in a budget, right? Like if we cut your budget, we can't say, we expect you to do 10X, right? Like I hear that. I hear that you're saying you can't do the same amount of stuff. I think that's understandable.
Larry, do you have the library budget there too? We can talk about it, because I don't think it's accurately reflected.
There was some debate too about the library increases, and it was a fairly close vote, I think, to even have it the way it is now.
But they're funding part of that themselves. That's coming from their fund balance. It's not coming from our revenue.
That's part of it. Yeah.
And we didn't give them what they asked for. And a big chunk of it is the reclassification of someone who is, frankly, has been severely underpaid, and because of the way civil service classification works, we can't keep that person at that level. So we either have to come up with an amount of money that matches the job they're doing, or have to get rid of that entire thing, that entire job function, and start over. But then how would the library function? Because it's the lead clerk. So it was a bad situation having to discuss what to do there. But the increase they were looking for in terms of programming, they didn't get what they asked for. That part of it was drastically cut.
But it was still an increase.
Yeah.
If I can add one thing about the library budget too, since the library is its own fund, included in the $60,000 increase would be, health insurance and dental insurance and Social Security and benefits. For the other department, that's all kind of together in the general fund, but for the library, that gets reflected as their total budget due to the nature of the fund.
They also have the weird thing with the being part of a condo or co-op, where they get their increases in electricity and things like that also get reflected.
Right. Yeah, the building maintenance item is an issue, and that's an item. Again, I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm just simply saying that if you were to look, and I don't have it up on the screen here, but if you were to examine the building maintenance line, for example, where there's an increase here, it's hard to just simply say cut that line, because for probably 3/4 of it, they are not the contracting entity for those services. The building condo is the contracting entity, and we get billed for the residual amount that belongs to them. So it's not as simple as just saying cut it.
Yeah.
So for clarification purposes, just to kind of, so it's not a $60,000 number, but the increases were the $14,000, right, for that?
Right, the 14,000, which is offset by the 14,000 in appropriated fund balance
From the library board.
from the library. And then labor, originally the request was to increase it by 13,520, and I think we cut that in about half from what their request was. So then the other increases in there are, unused sick, contract with other libraries, repair and maintenance, which is like that maintenance contract they have, utilities, social security, and health insurance. That's what makes up the increase. So the two big items, or the one, I guess, big item is, or two, the 14,000, which is offset by the fund balance, and then the increase in part-time labor.
It's about $6,000.
And again, just as a comment, the 14,000 is being offset this year, one time,
Right.
but it's a permanent increase in salary.
Right, yeah, that would, the increase in salary.
And the 14,000 is for the reclassification of a job that already exists.
Right.
As a different classification. And they're asking to reclassify that job, which then changes what the civil service designation is.
No, the civil
and
service
then makes
told them they had to classify it. That's what happened. It was the other way around. When they called the civil service to find out if the person was taking that, they were told they had to.
well,
Yes,
that's
that-
when they changed some of the role of that position.
Yeah.
They were then told by civil service.
Yeah,
The position as the person, well, Larry, you want to?
Yeah.
No. It is true that civil service highlighted this particular position and said it's not the right classification. It needs to be a higher classification. That's true, but in response to that, the option was presented to them to adjust the job description to better fit the lower classification so that they didn't feel forced into having the higher class job, which then is triggering the increase that was requested.
Can I say one thing?
That's
though?
exactly
I
how
think
it was
It
discussed.
feels a little odd to say we could demote anyone at any job and pay them less money. This person is doing the work already. The board says they have to be classified as this. Yes, we could ask them to do a different job that pays less money, but I don't think that's the right thing to do. And even with this increase of $14,000, the numbers they presented to us, they are still the lowest paid person with that title in Westchester by $10,000. So it was a very minor increase to reflect the job that this person's already doing, and they're still being paid under market rate at a time when the economy is terrible. So it feels like a very reasonable request, I think.
And I also want to say one other thing, just in remembering sort of what we went through, the process we went through. I think we did use fund balance to offset for a year, right? I think, but hoping that we would have a better situation. The same thing with the police officer, and I also think the same for the part-time worker, the grounds person, right? We use the 28,000 is coming from fund balance for that position as well. So we would just have a tough year.
Right,
where
but-
we're trying
Well,
to
the
make
library
this
was doing
work.
the fund balance, just to be clear, I'm not defending them, I'm just explaining what happened, right? Is that because they view their costs going down over the 7 years because they have an older staff. So people are going to be retiring and they can replace that lower levels. What you're doing, they're going to be doing the next
Right.
7 years. Yeah.
But again, I'm still not seeing the fairness in how come they were allowed to come in and ask for increases above and beyond with whatever the civil service required, and it wasn't questioned. The 28,000 you put back in for me to allow Chris to work part-time, do you know how many of my lines had to get cut to make that money up? That money didn't just appear. We had to cut a lot of lines. Again, they weren't asked to give anything else back. We have a theater, and I love Greg Allen to death, and he's gonna yell at me tomorrow. They're closed. They're reduced by $3,000. They're operating at less than 50%, right?
So there's certain, you could cut the library, or you can cut the theater in half, and it would be less than your cuts, so percentage-wise,
I know.
what more can you do, other than get rid of Greg?
No, God
You know,
forbid.
and it's like, to me,
Again,
there's certain departments have more leeway on what they can do. And yes, it affects services. Like we could say we're going to get rid of garbage pickup and we get rid of 2 DPW guys. To me, that's a lot more dramatic than cutting some rec funding.
But we're sitting back thinking everyone was on the same page as far as what they had to do to make the budget work for you. And the end result was that did not happen. And so we never had the chance to come back and say, well, we definitely need this and we definitely need that. Not that you would have gave it to us, but everyone else ignored the rules they were given.
I understand you feel like that, but I don't think that they would feel that way, right? Like, I think, I hear what you're saying, but I think, at least from what I saw, I don't think you said they all ignored what you told them. Like, I think most of the departments worked within your mandates, right?
I would,
It seems like DPW did that as
Well,
well, right?
well,
They're
yeah,
losing
by choice.
people.
but here's how I would characterize it. So, and it's just my viewpoint on it, but since you're talking about it, each department handled it somewhat differently. The library we talked about, the theater is fairly insignificant. The police department, they came in with a very specific request and made a case for something that, you found you had sympathy for and you agreed with it. So that was their approach. So I wouldn't characterize that as them not listening to me, you know what I mean, or listening to the mandate. In the case of DPW, yeah, they had probably a little bit more than what their cuts were assigned to them, that they came in with cuts, but their cuts were very opportunistic and quite easy, frankly. We were able to hold the line on some particular line items, but they took advantage of changeover in personnel. And so it's opportunistic. It was not difficult for them to hold that line. So everything's a little bit different. I can't just say everyone did or everyone didn't. It's not
To
quite
me,
that
the
way.
only part of it that didn't feel like they came in with that spirit was the $13,500 from the library to me. And I brought that up the night of that because I had sympathy for this person's out of title, they're doing the job of something else. They did a survey, which, to me, I'm not convinced that was every single library clerk in Westchester. To me, it might have just been some, but I was willing to give them that and say, yes, this person's out of title, and we have to increase them, and they're still, $10,000, $12,000 below the mean. The $13,500, which we cut in half, to me was tone deaf to me, and I said that night. I was disagreed with, by the board, so that we cut it in half, so it was like $6,000 increase instead of 13. But to me, that $6,000 probably it would have been cut if I had more votes. So that piece of it to me was the part that was tone deaf. Like there's things like that come in, and again, a lot of their budget is also spoken for because it's just a different entity. So those weren't the things we had to discuss. We had basically discussed the two things to me: the new title and the increase for the part-time staff for additional activities.
The last thing I'll say, and I appreciate you giving me this opportunity, I really do. Budget cuts usually mean something, and that's, we all have to suffer. There's pain involved with cuts. Whether it's our home budget or work, cuts mean pain. The pain was directed in one place this year. Whether it was intentional or not, if you look at the whole picture, the pain was clearly affecting people, programs, and personnel. And we're not, like for example, I probably have to cap day camp unless the revenue matches it, because right now we're only budgeted for 250 people. We're gonna probably be able to go up to 300. I don't know how to staff that. Okay, 40 people on waiting lists.
None of the staffing cuts had to do with day camp.
No, but I have to put more money in, I have to show you more revenue, I have to make sure it could work. I'm looking at it again that it's a big picture. The demand for our services is growing faster than we all thought it would. Just think 1 second, when we were talking about special events, whoever came to the hayride knew what the line was, so we had to address that. All of the special events have more people. How do you come into next year and not budget to be prepared to have more people come? So we had to increase those. Where did we get the money? From all the lines I described to you. So we had to make our own cuts to make the necessary increases happen. Not because we wanted to, because it's the only way it would work without having additional funding. Again, I said enough, thank you.
Can I just ask this question about daycare, like, the day count? So if programs show increased revenue, and those are, I assume, part-time workers, okay, so would there be an opportunity to
Yes.
increase?
Yes.
Okay, okay. I mean, I guess, I'm gonna say one thing about the library also. I do appreciate the library. I personally would like to see more programming from the library. I think there were many cuts in programming from when I moved here 13 years ago that I don't see happening. So that's why I was in favor of giving them some more programming budget. I mean, I think it's just not an easy year, right? And I think it's very difficult because, you know, we sort of talked about this as a board, but like, you know, yeah, we might have to deal with less programming from the rec, right? We may have to, you know, be able to increase it if there's more, you know, revenue. I mean, it's unfortunate, right? But I don't think that, you know, we expect if there are cuts and there are serious cuts that the rec is gonna just magically do everything it was gonna do. Like, I think we understand that.
The thing is, Joe, I'm very sympathetic to what you're saying. I don't want you to think that it's antagonistic. Like, what is this guy talking about? I understand everything you're saying, and I, you know, my son is, you know, he's 12 now, so he's kind of aged out of the programs. But he went to the day camp. He did the rec baseball when he was little. He did the rec basketball every single summer. I understand the value of the department, and I know it's not just the rec stuff. I just happened to mention that because that's what our interests were, right? I think what's putting a bad taste in your mouth is that the library did not share your approach. But when you say nobody else did, I feel like the library is becoming like the whipping boy for that. And I think the thing I would ask you to be open-minded to is what we described as far as the library having different financial situations than any other department because of the condo situation, because they pay their own employees in a way that other departments don't have to worry about. And Brian put it best that they're the only thing that they really did that was, to use the word, was tone deaf. I don't know if I've used that word, but I understand it was they wanted to have a part-time clerk that they were in danger of losing, get more hours, and the reason is because they were getting a lot of letters, and they shared some of them with me, there have been cuts already in child programs, for the child reading programs where people come and do the reading, and that was the reason why they wanted that extra money. So, but other than that, we're talking about a very small amount of money. It's not like comparable to what we're talking about in the bigger shape of the budget. So I just would ask you to consider that it's not as disparate, I think, as it may seem on the face. That's what I'm trying to say.
I just also want to say, I'm in no way asking or saying anything negative towards our police department or our fire department, and also about the water department, because I don't even know how you understand the water department budget. But, you know, police and fire, you can give them anything they need. It has nothing to do with that. And, you know, so I've heard something, I've learned a little tonight. I just know that I think you're going to, unfortunately, get more complaints about us this year than you've ever had. And that, obviously, as the guy who sits at the top, doesn't sit well. But I have no choice.
Yeah, that's from Pelican.
Hi, Matt Lombrown. I live on Jaffray. Longtime listener, first time caller. So first, I just want to say thank you to the elected officials, administration. I know enormous challenges, so I think the budget on the whole largely is one that supports the infrastructure and services that make this town very unique and very special. So first of all, just thank you for that. And in particular, sort of changing gears, not at all, thank you for the commitment to support and preserve our incredible library. In times of economic uncertainty, libraries such as ours are of their most critical importance. It's a place where parents can take their kids for activities without further cost. It's a place with computers and high-speed connectivity where you can apply for jobs. It's a place where our young adults can go for self-directed enrichment. And it's a place where anybody in this community can go to safely learn or just simply relax. And so thank you for nourishing this special place where services or help you get don't depend on how much you have available to spend. It's a place where you can simply go to get help by asking. So thank you, and this is really an important part in our community to me, and I know to many people, and in times of economic downturn, library services are utilized more than ever. And so I really think it's a counter-cyclical kind of place where in economic downturns, libraries need more funding rather than less, but thank you so much for the commitment to this incredible part of our community, incredible part of our town. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming out. Anybody else? Anyone online, Larry? You're still having sound issues.
Yeah, there's still a buzz on it, but you can, from what I could hear upstairs, you can hear it.
A little buzzy.
Yeah. I think it's one of the wireless mics, but I don't know which one, so.
You want to test each one? With
Well,
upstairs?
probably why you guys aren't here, maybe.
And come back an hour later. and-
Yeah, exactly.
Probably me.
Yeah, so anyway, but no, the answer is no.
So I think we've gotten a lot of feedback this year, much more than previous years. I think that we've discussed this, a lot as a board already. So I'm pretty much ready to close the public hearing if you guys are as well. That's fine, right? Rather we could adopt the budget tonight as well.
You can do whatever you want. We don't have.
Thanks, Larry.
There's a deadline. There's a deadline to adopt the budget.
Tonight, yes.
Yeah. So any or just the budget one?
So from the public hearing, public hearing has to be closed by April 20th. So you can keep it open tonight, you can close it, you can push it to April 17th, and then close it after that night. You can, that's what I mean by there's a few different options.
I think even the letters that didn't make it officially, I think we kind of got the gist.
Well,
of
we
those.
sent them to you, yeah.
Yes, so
you
we've
have
read
it.
them even though they're not in the official record yet. So I don't think that there's like a second. I think there was a lot of unanimity in the letters and their tone and their support, which is why I didn't read all 42 of them. But I don't think that there was any new issues that we hadn't thought of or that were novel to us that we hadn't considered. So I'm actually comfortable closing the public hearing tonight. So if anyone wants to keep it open until Monday, if there are other issues, I could probably be persuaded to do that as well.
I would keep it open, just to give people an opportunity, just another opportunity.
Okay, that works for me. All right, so then there's nothing to do. Next is discussion of revised process for the Architecture Review Board of Appeals.
Okay.
Any good thing Rick's here again?
Yeah, exactly.
Switch hats.
So as you remember, this was tonight was supposed to be a work session, so it would have been a little different format than we have here, but, so this is a sort of a work session item. I'm gonna hand out, make sure so you
Is this the thing that's online that you included?
It is, yes.
But you know what, it might be better on paper this one time, thank you.
It requires a magnifying glass.
Wait, did Ed print this out?
He's the only one with the drafting tools.
I don't have paper bigger than this.
He's the one who has these like tiny, look at the print at the
You
bottom.
need at least have my magnifying glasses today.
I have my regular reading glasses, that's all I have.
See how big my reading glasses are, can I read the bottom line here?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I can't.
Okay, so basically, a year ago, we started a process to try to streamline the process for land use approvals, permits and whatnot. And really, that was in response to the board's priority for wanting to do that. And so we had identified the Architectural Review Board as an area where there was some inefficiencies in the way the process was working. Not the way the board themselves functioned, but just how it fit into the whole process. And secondly, there was also a difficulty in staffing the ARB with a professional architect, because it has to be a professional architect that does not practice or have clients in town. And so that
That's
really
been the genesis of this entire thing, is finding architects that are willing to serve on this board and don't have any clients in town.
Yeah, it's a very difficult thing, but those are the two kind of impetuses for us going forward and looking at this. So what we put together here, and I'm not going to get into the details of what I just handed out to you, but just describe this, that we are working towards having the ARB inject their comments at a point in time early on in the process. So for important planning board applications, and we can discuss what that means, what important is, but things like additions and demolitions, whatnot, the ARB would be submitting comments in the same fashion that others in the village submit comments. So for applications that go to the planning board, the village engineer has a chance to review, the building inspector, the village attorney, our landscape architect, depending on what the application is, will have an opportunity to submit comments to the planning board. And then the planning board uses those comments and carries them through the application process and the review. And hopefully at the end, you end up with a thoughtful project that reflects those comments. So it was so that was one of the main things we identified, was to have the ARB submit comments early on in the process the way the others do. And we thought that would serve the applicants well, as opposed to, now where you have a scenario where a large project might go through the planning board, might spend many months at the front of the planning board, and then when the planning board approves, in order for the building department to issue a building permit on that project, they then need to go to the architectural review board for approval, and the ARB may raise issues that have never been heard before, and so it's a bit unfortunate when that happens. Again, looking at it from the standpoint of the applicant. So that's the one key component, was getting early input. For projects or permit applications that get submitted that are not planning board applications, we would seek out comments from the ARB only for those applications that are in the historic district. The building department would be the receiver of those comments, and the building department would follow through and get those comments to the applicant and make sure that the comments are considered. As long as there's nothing that's completely outrageous about the comments, of course. But we would expect to get thoughtful comments back from the ARB. Again, these are for historic district applications only. And then, the third level of applications are really those, what we would call routine applications that are not in the historic district. And we'll go through the matrix a little bit here just to get a flavor for what we're talking about. But in those cases, we're looking at the idea of using an outside consultant, like a professional architect, that would review applications and provide comments to the building department. We haven't quite settled on what the guidelines and criteria might be for that person, but I think if we're going to look at moving this forward, I think we can come up with that, and we know we would have to. So that's really the kind of the overview of the proposal that we talked about, and I will say that we had over the course of the past year, and it did take a while, I'll admit, but it's a complicated thing, as you can see. But we did have, going back to when Trustee Gilliland was on the board, Trustee Burgos was involved in the process, Mary Ann Stessich was involved, of course, our building inspector, myself, and we did work with the ARB chair, Rick Rizzullo, who's here. And so we worked on this and tried to come up with a good answer. More recently, Trustee Ogrodnik took part in the process now that he's on the board, and Trustee Gilliland is off, so he stepped in towards the end here. So with that, what I think we can at least focus on and to point out on this very complicated spreadsheet. So this spreadsheet is really a pictorial view of the land use approval process, revised to reflect some of these changes that we're proposing. The important part of this, and that first category that I mentioned, the planning board applications, that's that first box at the top of the screen. And so, I'm sorry, the top of the page. And next to it, there was all the different types of projects listed there: additions, new construction, driveways, etc. And we have check boxes next to the ones that we want the ARB to provide comments on, and then there's some that wouldn't really be appropriate for ARB comment, like water body and water course applications, which really don't have anything to do with ARB. So, but there's others here that, you know, we made, you know, kind of our own judgment as to which ones we felt where the ARB could add its most amount of value to it. And that's one of the things that I didn't say in the beginning, is that the overriding thing here is that we want the ARB to still be engaged in the process. We made it very clear to Rick and the other members of the ARB that this is not about cutting the ARB out of the process. What we're trying to do is get them to focus their efforts and focus their workload on the most important of the projects, and try to take some of the less important or more routine applications off of their plate. So that was that's really one of the impetus for this. So again, I don't think, I mean, we can certainly do this tonight. I don't know whether you want to go through each particular type of application in front of the planning board and see if it's something you want the ARB to comment on or not comment on, or you want time to think about it. I am interested to hear, I don't know, Rick, if you have any comments. I am interested to hear. I did meet with the members of the ARB back in March, and there may be some comments coming. I don't know, you know, I think my expectation is there's probably some comments about maybe which column some of these things should be in, you know, maybe some adjustments here, but there may be more overall comments, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, for our history as a board, we heard, you know, the building department's kind of take on this, and obviously there's been many, many hours spent on all of this. To me, what I'd like to actually hear from the ARB current members, you know, and Rick, it doesn't have to be tonight, just have to be, you know, if you want to speak tonight, great, but if not, I think we probably need, you know, I'd like to have a work session with, you know, Marianne, obviously, the ARB, the building department. Those are probably the three that I most care about having at the, you know, at a work session to hear everyone's plans. So I think, you know, I think this is, I think the idea, the big picture idea of this seems, you know, assuming the ARB is on board, this seems, you know, like a really good idea to me. I think it, you know, I think it's good for the ARB, it's good for the other boards, and it's you know, it's good for the residents. You know, streamlines things a little bit. So, and I think also in some ways the ARB or the ARC can have more input, you know, regularly almost. Like it almost seems like, so I know that's sometimes the complaint I get is that, you know, the planning board gets to the ninth inning and then they go back to the ARB and then it's like, oh, now we can't really change anything. And it's like, you know, there's like those weird, at least perceptions. I don't know if it's always accurate, but, you know, so I feel like something needed to be tweaked. We also had the issue of the lack of architects. Like, I can't believe you need to go back to school and get a full architecture degree. No commitment. But you know, like to me, that if we can solve those two things and make it potentially better for residents, it seems like a home run. Again, depending on the ARB's take on this, because they understand it better than anybody. So.
So the one point that I didn't tie together then was the idea that, you know, in theory, and it's up to you, of course, but in theory, you could have locally practicing architects on a board like this, because they don't have final approval authority. You know, right now they do, and obviously, you know, I think for obvious reasons, it's difficult to have an architect here, even if they recuse themselves, to walk around to the other side and then have their colleague present one of their projects. That just doesn't work. I think, but to hear thoughtful comments and inject those comments into the process, I think we could potentially open that up to local architects, and that was the other point I wanted to make.
And I think that's actually one last thing I was thinking of when we were going through this each time was, after we're going to have that group of people that I originally mentioned that are all obviously the obvious stakeholders, having the architects that, you know, there's like a handful of architects that are regularly here putting in applications, getting their take on it, see if there's things that, from their perspective, we can do better as well. So, great, thanks.
Rick Mazzullo? One of the things that I'm glad Larry just mentioned was the fact that at this point, the ARB has the ability to make decisions. It won't after this. Now, I make issue of that because there's a lot of work that's put in by the ARB during the month to look at the drawings, really look at the drawings and think about what's right or wrong with what's going on the drawings. And what will now happen is we will make comments, maybe earlier in the process, maybe not, but we'll now make comments, and it will be taken, those comments will be taken by one or two people on that committee and taken to the building department or taken to the planning board for them to make the final decision. What's wrong with the picture here? Why would anybody want to spend that kind of time, looking at things and making decisions on architectural issues if the planning board or the building department can just say, nah, I think you're wrong, we're going to go with this. And that's essentially what could happen. I'm sorry, Larry, you're hearing this from me now, but this is kind of, as the more time that we think about, or that I think about this, and there are people, other board members that are starting to feel, like, why would I want to waste my time? I personally put in a lot of hours every month looking at this, and I made comments 2 weeks before my meeting. If there's something that's egregious on the drawings that needs to be fixed or needs to be addressed, I get comments from my board members, and I send in an email to the building department, and they send comments to the applicants. So, it's our way of hurrying the process as best we can do it. Now, look, when I sat on that dais in 2011, 2012, we were talking about this then. I mean, this has always been an issue. I just don't know that, the process, in addition to the one or two people from this body presenting to the board and to the building department, and like I said, the board can just say, no, we're gonna go. We think we're okay with this. We're gonna go with that. And frankly, when we get projects in the seventh inning, eighth inning of the game, we tend to make fewer, large decisions because we know it's going to go back to the planning board, and it's just going to upset everybody. But if it's the right thing to do for the project or for the application, it's something that has to be done. So, I'm not sure that this direction is the right way. It's ultimately your decision, what happens. But Larry also said or talked about other bodies like the Han Engineering, coming in early, and those people, put a lot of work in. They're also paid people. We are not paid people. We are volunteers, and I think that's the biggest part of. Sure.
I totally understand your concerns. I think I would be concerned. Do you assume that the planning board would not take your comments? So maybe the way that I see it, the way that I would hope it would work, right, is that you have sort of the scope of the things that the architectural review board looks at, and I would assume that board is looked as the expert, right? Like that's what you specialize in versus what the planning board specializes in. To me, there should theoretically not be a conflict, so that the comments that you're making, I would assume will be taken right in and given. That's maybe where I guess that's my concern would be I would assume that they would, right? You guys are the expert in that area, right? The architectural, let's say the review board, right? That's your area that you were supposed to work on. And I understand the planning board to be something different, what they're looking at. And I can just tell you as a homeowner, and I went through a very big, probably
I remember.
Familiar,
Uh-huh.
but it was difficult to kind of go through planning board,
Mhm.
get to architectural, then have to go back to the
Right.
planning. That's super frustrating. So I guess other than this, like, it be mandatory that they take your comments, I would have hoped that it would work in a way that they wouldn't just discard.
Well,
your-
I agree that some of the things that we've seen is when we get a project come to us, and this all goes back to being involved earlier in the process. A lot of times we'll get projects that come to us that say have a fence. Well, the planning board has already spoken on the fence. So what we can do with that fence is very, very limited. Because the planning board says that's the place where the fence has to be. We have, authority over what the fence looks like, how high it is, that kind of stuff, the color, not the color, but the material that it's made out of. So we have seen that, that it's not always, we're not always in agreement. But I think if we get involved in the process earlier, which there still has to be a way to do that, no matter what happens, with this whole process, we still have to get involved earlier. Does that mean 2 or 3 people from the Architecture Review Board goes to the planning board or sits in on the planning board pre-meetings or what? Something has to get us involved earlier. But to get us involved later, those problems are always, they're going to be, it's going to happen. The only time really nowadays we ever get involved early is when we're asking about if an application applies to the demolition, situation, they'll come to us first and ask us, do you think this is a true demo situation? Are there, in the demo questions that we have to, follow up on, they're very specific. So we will find out. I don't think we've ever said that that it's not a demolition situation that you should not allow. So it went forward, but there's times where we don't always agree. But like I said, ultimately we need to find a way to get involved earlier. And I think to ask a body like the ARB to review applications and then not have ultimate say in that application going forward. We had 100 applications last year. I don't think there was more than 1 or 2 that didn't go through, meaning they were with certain, massaging of the application, it was able to go through. But and it was rewarding for us to see that many applications come and go and, successfully. It's not necessarily going to be that way much longer, apparently.
I have a question. I don't know if you're the right person to answer, Larry, but when we first looked at pretty much this map, hasn't changed that much, right, from a few months ago. So there was this section in the middle. It's the third box down from the left, ARC submission there, and then the dotted line goes to the building department. So my understanding of that was, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, that's why I'm trying to understand, that you did have final decision there because the building department was not going to.
The ARC did, not the ARB.
No, but the ARC is the new successor of the plan, no?
It's technically a separate entity of the ARB.
But there's not going to be an ARC and an ARB after this
No.
year, right?
No, at one point, we were trying to make a distinction between the ARB, which is like the current ARB that sits and has approval authority, and the ARC, which is like the Architectural Review Committee,
Right.
that doesn't have approval authority. That we were trying to draw that distinction. But
Right, but
the way this is, but there was no, the way this was contemplated, there was still no approval authority for the applications in that particular section that you're pointing to.
But I
which are the-
remember being told by somebody, I think it was you, but I don't want to put it on you because it might have been someone else, it might have been Ed, I don't know.
Right.
That basically the building department was not going to make any kind of judgment on the ARC's decision on these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items.
Right,
In
they're
other
all
words, they were
historic
going to accept that decision and then enforce that decision. That there was no, that they didn't have the right to veto the decision there. Am I remembering that right or no?
Yes, in practical terms, yes.
Okay.
Okay. In absolute terms, look, you can come up with a scenario where the ARB says, do it this way, and that way that they've said is completely not buildable, or, you know, it's whatever, I'm just making up a scenario, in which case the building department can't follow that to the end. You know what I'm
But
saying?
essentially,
But-
there's always outliers, but
Yes, of course.
essentially,
But so that's what I mean, in practical terms, yes,
they still have
their
that
comments,
authority.
But there are also things that aren't even gonna come to the ARB anymore, they're just gonna go right to the building department for decisions.
yes, that's right, using the consultant, right.
But no, you, to the point, I just want to make sure I understood, I'm not arguing with you, I
Mhm.
understand that I'm trying to wrap my, this is a lot to take in.
If you can figure that out in one day,
Well, I've seen this
you
before.
shouldn't be
so
here.
It's 2 days, but, no, seriously, is that my understanding, that's why I was asking, because like you said, and as Arlene said, it's very compelling, why should we do all this work if in the end we don't have any approval authority? But my understanding before I walked into the room today, based on the last time we discussed this, was that you still would have that authority on these items in that box. And on the other items, it would go to the planning board
Well,
with
the
understanding that.
way we originally understood it was there would be one person, probably the architect on the board. And I caution against multiple architects on this board because it's like herding cats. Or just to hire 3 different designers to design your house to see what happens. It's the same thing. I mean, it really is.
Yeah.
But nothing against architects. It's just
No,
that they
no,
all have their own opinions.
Right.
God bless them all.
That's why there's multiple architects right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Probably have a dot architect
yes,
But it's
because I
still-
know how to herd cats.
But just to draw the distinction in the words, I just want to make sure,
Yeah.
so while the ARB would not have final approval authority of an application, even for the ones in that section. In other words, the person comes in and makes an application and it ends up at the ARB, and the ARB has their comments, but that doesn't mean the project's approved. It means the building department now needs to take those comments and make sure that they get carried out in their course of approving that plan. You know what I mean? So it's subtly different.
Same for the planning board. I mean,
Exactly.
the point I think Arlene was making earlier, and Rick, you're right, there's a distinction. You're volunteer, and the engineer, and myself, and the landscape architect are all paid, but I've never seen a situation where the planning board doesn't do what the engineer recommends, or doesn't do more, I guess more important, what the landscape architect recommends. Once, I mean, I want to say maybe once out of 100 times, she might recommend something that maybe the property owner will make it, and the board will think twice about it, you know, but they take the advice of their experts, as I expect they would take the advice of the ARB, so it's not insignificant.
Yeah, no, I mean, that was our plan all along, was to
Right.
get them into that process.
Also, I guess, let's say that it did work, right? Like, let's say that they didn't, and it became contentious, and they really weren't taking your advice, then I would think that's not working, right? Because nobody wants to,
100%.
these are the experts, and if they're being discounted, then what's the point? Like, we should get to on that. Or nobody's
Exactly.
volunteering to waste their time,
Exactly.
right? Yeah.
The other thing is, when you look down the road to have somebody, on the planning board, I just think, believe me, there's no level of prestige of being on the ARB. However, it's a government body that, has very specific jobs to do. And they, the 5 people that I work with, 4 of the people that I work with, take those jobs very seriously. And just like I don't know if it will ever happen where the building department, the planning board will say, no, we don't think this is right, we're going to change it. I don't know if that'll ever happen. However, the other part of it is, once we make a decision, the decision is then taken, out of our hands. It's now to either, like I said, the building department or whoever's the body to make that decision. It's up to them, and that kind of takes a little bit of the steam out of what we do.
Can I ask you a question? If it were the case that if this went into effect, you guys made recommendations and they were sort of like followed, just sort of the same way, because what Marianne is saying, that they take the advice of the experts. Do you think that would change your thought about this? Like that if you know, the advice of the ARC was just advice that was taken by the planning board as it was given, and in a very general way. There was not like a lot of disagreement or questioning of it, but it was sort of like, here's this advice, that's, here's this piece of information, and this is how they think you should do X, Y, and Z. And if it works like that, do you think people would feel differently? That, you know.
If it seemed like they were always taking our recommendation, probably not. It would
Yeah.
probably feel more like the current situation.
So I guess my question is, if we tried this, right? Because I think the biggest benefit of this is the earlier input, right? I think that just
No question.
for the homeowner, that has to happen. But I think as a board, I'm now speaking for everyone, but I think, you know, our point in doing this, right, was to make the process better. If it didn't work, I think we would read it.
Yeah, of course. I mean, speaking personally, when I've been out for over a year, and I didn't know what people would come up to me and say, because, you know, I've heard, well, once you're at work, people complain to you, right? And I waited to be, and honestly, 85% of the people who talk to me about something about the process of trying to renovate and trying, you know, and it's not, you know, it's not necessarily like, but it's like a confusion and the process and what they've
My
been through.
own people on the board, I have 2 or 3 that have been in front of all of the, you know,
Yeah.
governmental boards, and, you know, they say it's crazy, it's gotta change.
So, yeah, so for me, like, you know, like, my number one thing is for the residents, right? I would love to see a system that makes it easier for people to do what they need to do. Of course, keeping in place things that have to be kept in place. We have
Mhm.
really important reasons for most of the things on this list, and we need to make sure that those are preserved, right? So I think, so if, again, I keep going back to that line that goes directly from you to the building department, I still see that as you guys having final authority, in the sense I understand that things
De
can
facto,
go,
yeah, right.
but in real practice, I mean, you know, the building department's not gonna say, Rick and his crew are crazy and just do something completely different, right? I mean, you know.
I assume not.
Yeah,
I
no.
have to assume not.
Exactly, yeah.
As we talked about when we met privately, I mean, I have no way of assuring you that that's not going to happen. All I can tell you is that's not what our past track record is. It's not the track record of the planning board. You know what I mean? So I don't have anything else to go by.
I can't speak for the board, but I can speak for me in saying I'll be the first to propose and vote for a revision if it turns out that this isn't working the way it's supposed to be.
Of course.
As you say, you guys put in an incredible amount of time on these things. You know, I do think having it, you know, to me, it almost seems like you've now become kind of the signs and awnings and historic district group, mostly. But I also think that that's important. You know,
Yeah, we forgot about fences.
but I thought they're only if they're not max 6.5 feet. I guess the historic district, but to me, it's like maybe that'll also offset some of the work, so it won't be as bad. But again, I think if the planning board and the building department didn't take that effort seriously, it would be, you know, it would be so unprofessional. Like I can definitely understand it's a big change, and I understand the fear of it, but you know, I think it would be, I think everyone would admonish them if it was like,
Yeah.
thanks, Rick.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be like,
Yeah.
really, I think the person's
So who do we get together at the work session?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say 2 things, and you just made me, it really is, Brian, it's really a lot more than just what you're reading on the ARC list there. Their review of additions, new construction is really important. They're still gonna do it, it's really important, but you get the input earlier, and Rick made a really good point when you gave the example of a fence. A fence is part of, it's not just a fence standing alone, but the fence is part of a big project for the planning board. The planning board isn't gonna look at the material of the fence or anything, but and I guess they might look at the location of it if somebody raised the issue, but, you know, unless somebody raises the issue, they're probably not gonna look so much unless it was in some really odd place. And I think there was actually a case that did happen. And then it gets to the ARB, and, so they approve it, they give it site plan approval. And so essentially, the location of the fence is approved. It comes to the ARB, And the ARB says, you know, it would work a lot better if the fence were a little bit further back or a little bit closer to the street or whatever. But unless it's already been approved, and then these people, if the ARB insisted it be moved, would then have to go back to the planning board to get. Whereas if you would come in, you know, if it got to you earlier and you pointed out to the planning board, hey, this would work out much better if the fence were here, then it's all part, and then the approval's fine. And it's come up not a lot.
No, but
a
you
couple
know when it
times.
comes up,
Yeah.
it's, you know.
But that would be totally avoided
Yeah.
by.
And that kind of leads me into my final thought is that this is not going to be less work. This is going to be easily as much or more, because instead of just, you know, reviewing these applications in the comfort of our home, we now are going to have to be at the planning board. And we're going to have to sit there to be able to see, you know, what's going on, and we have to really look at the application from an architectural standpoint, well before. I mean, granted, it's do the work now or do the work later. We're still doing the work.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's open for discussion exactly what the mechanics are, but I think the way we envisioned it is that there's about a 1 week window when the applications are received to when the planning board, you know, they have their pre-meeting, which obviously someone can attend.
More than a week, about 10 days.
About 10 days, so there's a pretty good window of time there where everyone has the plans, everyone can review them, and everyone can get their comments in. What the mechanics of that are, you may decide that, you know, right in the middle of that, you decide that you want to have a meeting. It's not a meeting to hear from the applicants, it's a meeting to review, you know, around a table.
Or
the applications.
whoever from the ARB or ARC, whatever it's going to be called, is going to, you know, I don't know that all the ARB members are going to receive all that information early on.
Yeah, I mean, we would.
It would probably,
Well, we
right
actually have it
now, it gets
online now.
distributed online, and it's put out about 10 days before the meeting. And then you just go look at it online. So so generally I have about 10 days to review before the meeting. And it's accessible, actually it's probably accessible to the board of trustees, anybody who wants to look at it.
But that, to me, sounds like all the other applications that are not going to the planning board first are going to come into us a week later. So we're going to be looking at those applications, and then the other applications that we have that don't go through the planning board.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll definitely have to talk about the logistics of it and trying to, look, the idea was not to give you more work. I mean,
No, I get
if
it.
we turned around and didn't change one thing in this process, but we said, hey, we really want your input in the beginning, because everyone here agrees that people need input earlier.
Right.
Well, then that's really more work. And it doesn't help the applicant. It helps the applicant out a little bit, but then they still have to come back to you at the end. So it hasn't changed that much. What
Right,
we're
well,
trying to
I think
do
this still has to evolve.
Yeah, no, I mean, what we were trying to do is get the input, get it into the process, and eliminate the need for them to have to come back, because we are confident that it's going to be carried through to the end by either the planning board or the building department. That's where we're trying to get to. And to me, that's not as much work, I think. And
So you're asking, well,
that's what we're trying.
yeah, okay. All right, there's still more to be discussed, but
For sure.
I think we're,
I think that we should look at this as a process, like, so we may think that it's gonna work that way, and like, that's what we hope, but if it doesn't, or like, if what you're saying is like, you guys are giving, you're getting all this feedback and no one's even taking it, then I think we have to go back.
Yeah, it's not what we
Oh, I
did.
agree. I'm have complete faith that you're going to do what's reasonable. That's not really the issue here. I'm just, you know, giving you our point of view on
And if you have
this
any
process going
suggestions
forward.
on how to incorporate, because you agree with us that things need to happen early.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Since 2011, I've agreed with you on that. It just never progressed.
Right, so I mean, this is not being voted on tonight. If you
No,
have
no,
ideas,
of
you know,
course.
and everything, I can only speak for me again, I would actively.
And I have, you know, 4 other people to have it.
But I hear your concern, I hear your concern about like doing work and then, like not take it seriously, and I think that is something that we all don't feel should happen, so if that's what happens, then that process is not working. then it doesn't work,
I
because
agree.
that's not the intent.
Not at all.
It's not to make it optional,
Mhm.
right? If we're gonna make it optional, then see, it's like peers.
We do have a local architect in the audience here, if you're interested in hearing from him. If he wants to. Yes?
Sure.
Okay. Just move this.
Right on.
Earl Ferguson.
Sorry for taking so much time.
No, thank you for your.
Yeah, thank you.
The opposite. Rick, thank you so much for.
Hey, Earl.
Hi, Earl. Sorry for the audio problems.
Hi, Earl.
Larry, I hate,
Go ahead.
but I would support a budget increase to get that straightened out.
Yes, thank you.
Anyway, I just, of course, you woke me up from my comfortable cocoon in this discussion, and if the discussion is about streamlining the process in the application and approvals process, then I would suggest that maybe we review that in a more comprehensive perspective. The ARB is not necessarily the problem here. And I'm not trying to say what the problem is, but I'm just saying that if we would want to serve the public better by a more efficient process, there could be a study group or some manner of analysis of the overall process in a comprehensive way, and it could be reviewed. And maybe there could be an expedited staff review for certain applications, or the code might need to go beyond the historic district, because we're looking at local landmark laws and things that go beyond the historic district, where the ARB look at all of the laws that are connected to ARB review relative to the historic preservation in the entire community. And that's basically what I wanted to say. And maybe put together a study group to look at this, bring in the local architects, people who've had experience with this, and try to cultivate, more information about the overall comprehensive process to make it more. I think everybody would, even I would love to have a more expedited review and approval process. So that's all I have to say, and thank you. And Rick, thank you very much for your leadership you've been really wonderful. Thank you.
No problem, Earl. Great, thanks, Earl.
Thanks, Earl.
All right, well, so we'll figure out May or June.
Yeah, I have to look at the schedule, but yeah, maybe as early as May, we'll put together a few people to try to hammer this out a bit. Right? I mean, you want to talk it out a little bit
I
more.
think there's this issue, and then I think there's Earl's issue. This isn't going to solve every issue we have, but people same process needs to be.
Well, yeah, certainly. I mean, obviously, the board's overriding priority was to try to streamline the process. So we're trying to start somewhere. It's obviously something you can't just dismantle.
Yeah.
As far as to Earl's comment on the historic district, I mean, we very much were deliberate about keeping the historic district applications within the purview of the ARB and wanting their comments and not anyone else's. So.
I think, just wanted to add on that. I think part of Earl's point was also maybe we could consider not just the historic district, but including locally designated landmarks as part of that, because some of those I think are outside the historic district, like Octagon House, for example, right? Because a locally designated landmark that is not in the historic district, but I think they would prefer that was included. So that seems like a pretty minor change.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Yeah, true.
It is now, so it makes sense.
Yep.
Great.
Good, thank you.
Next up is the stipulation of agreement with civil service Employees Association regarding pandemic premium pay. Easy to say.
Yeah. Okay. So, as you know, both unions, actually, the CSEA in this case, and also the PBA, petitioned the village to consider paying a portion of its ARPA funds that were received out to its employees as premium pay. And so these resolutions, they're separate resolutions, but we'll take them together here. The resolution with the Civil Service Employees Association reflects that premium pay. There are essentially 3 levels of lump sum payments. Frontline employees who worked throughout the pandemic period, which was considered to be March 1st, 2020 through May 31st, 2021, would receive a one-time lump sum of $4,500. Employees who were not on the front lines but were full-time employees and continued to deliver government services throughout that period would receive a one-time payment of $3,500. And then there were certain part-timers who were very much involved in as permanent part-timers delivering services to the community. And those employees would receive a half of the $3,500 or $1,750, and that's the way it's scheduled out. In the case of the CSEA, the agreement is necessary because they are subject to collective bargaining, so this had to memorialize it. The next resolution, again, taking them together, is for the non-union employees for which you don't have a duty to bargain, but it's the same parameters are being used.
I had 2 questions on
Yeah,
that.
of course.
One is, why is Michael's throwing up 3,486 instead of 3,500?
That was actually the same question. I don't know. I thought it was a good. It was a good deal. This year's certain implementation.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So the other feature, one of the features of this is that if an employee either retired during that window of time or was hired during that window of time, they received a prorated
Oh,
amount.
so that's appropriate. The other thing is, who, it sounds accusatory, and I don't mean it accusatory at all, I mean it information. Who decided which category they were going to go into?
Essentially, for the non-union staff, it was me in consultation with the department heads. For the CSEA, it was simple because they're all in the 4,500 category.
Anything else? Or I'll start my reading. Results are. Oh, sorry.
We'll be doing this at a future time for the PBA with
Yes, the language is in the final stages of review, is my understanding, but it'll be along the same parameters, I expect. I mean, it'll be along the same parameters as what you have with the CSEA. They were essentially, it was kind of unique, actually. We negotiated them together, all 3 of us, myself and the 2 union heads. And, there was a little extra review by the PBA attorney, so that's taking a little bit longer, but that's fine. We didn't want to hold up the others waiting for just the PBA.
I guess my editorial comment would be, this feels like the right thing to do. When we first heard about this money, I think the board unanimously said we should share this with the people that we're out there on the front lines rather than keeping it for our coffers. And I think I want to thank both the unions and Larry for negotiating something that I think that makes sense across the board. Whoever was happening with this, I mean, this was an unprecedented time, and you can't ever put a monetary value on something like that, but we have. We're lucky we were able to do something, and it is a little bit of a thank you for people that had to be here, and they also didn't really have to be here. They could have not come, and not done their job. So we appreciate it.
Well, we probably haven't recognized the fire department and ambulance service, who really aren't eligible for this kind of
Correct.
work, but should still receive recognition for the risks that they
And I will say that, and I was going to bring that up anyway, that in the case of the fire department, not so much the ambulance corps, because they're not actually part of us, but the fire department is. And, I was asked if there was any way that any of these provisions, any of these amounts could be extended to the fire department members, and there just is no way. The ARPA legislation doesn't provide for it. It provides only for those who are employed. So I also did put it back on the fire chief to see if any of other local departments figured out a way through this, and they haven't. So
I think unfortunately it's pretty clear in the law, right?
yeah. So there's just no provisions for volunteers, unfortunately.
Resolved to approve a stipulation of agreement with the Civil Service Employees Association regarding pandemic premium pay and authorize the village administrator to execute said stipulation, and further resolved to authorize the clerk treasurer to make any 2022-2023 operating budget transfers necessary to implement the terms of the stipulation. Make a motion, if I can have a second. All in favor? Aye. On to number 10, which is approval of pandemic premium pay for non-union employees. Resolved to approve payment of ARPA pandemic premium pay as detailed below. Further resolved to authorize the clerk treasurer to make any 2022-2023 operating budget transfers necessary to implement this resolution. I'll make the motion. We can have a second. Second. All in favor? Aye.
Nice to see some of the people on that list in this room.
Appointment of volunteer firefighters. Not approval of them. We do approve. We were happy to, and actually got to see both of them tonight, but I didn't get to talk to them. We had 2 new firefighters, younger firefighters, which is great. So resolved to approve the following new probationary members of the Irvington Fire Company, subject to the final approval by the Irvington Fire Company, James McFarland and Andrew May. I'll make the motion. We can have a second. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Next up is opposition to the discharge of contaminated water into the Hudson River, which sounds like something everyone's been. This is basically the Indian Point decommissioning, which apparently the plan was just to dump all the stuff into the Hudson River. But I guess they figure they've done it for the last 150 years. We're not going to do it now. I don't think anyone other than maybe Entergy thinks it's a good idea. So we wanted to jump on board and sign on with our fellow Westchester municipalities and sign on to read the entire thing. Hey, I'll go for the there, therefore be it resolved.
That would be good.
Now therefore be it resolved that the Village of Irvington opposes the plan to release over 1 million gallons of contaminated water from the Indian Point nuclear power plant site in the Hudson River. And be it further resolved that the Village of Irvington hereby urges the New York State Senate and Assembly to adopt the aforementioned bills S 5181 and A 5338, urges the governor to sign such legislation. And be it further resolved that the village clerk is hereby directed to send copies of this resolution to the following individuals, agencies: Environmental Protection Agency, New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, New York State Department of Health, New York State Decommissioning Oversight Board, New York State Public Service Commission, Governor Kathy Hochul, Senator Charles Schumer, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, State Senate Majority Leader Andrew Stewart Cousins, State Senator Peter Harkin, State Assembly Speaker Carl Hesty, State Assembly Member David Levenberg, State Assembly Member Mary Ann Shimsky, Westchester County Executive George Latimer, and the Westchester County Board of Legislators. Motion to have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's a lot of stamps.
Yeah. Next is approval of intermunicipal agreement with Irvington Union Free School District.
So this is a fairly straightforward one. As you probably have heard, the Nature Center has been the host of the school district's VIP program for developmentally disabled students. And the school district, heading into this school year, current school year, agreed to reimburse the village for some of its costs. I think there's some part-time labor and some materials, supplies and things that were used as part of the program. And it's really as simple as that. In order to do that, the school district needed to have a formal agreement between the village and them in order to be able to make that payment. So I think the reimbursement this time around is
By the
10,000?
time the school year's over, it'll be somewhere between $12,000 and $13,000 that they'll reimburse.
Right, and we have a current bill that we're ready to send, but we have to wait till this agreement's in place, so. But once it's in place, we should be good to go.
So this was signed by the school district in September.
They never sent us the contract.
They just sat on it.
They just sat on it.
I guess the school board had to approve it or something, maybe.
I think it just slipped through the cracks.
I don't know, yeah.
You just got my
The program started in September.
Oh, so that's probably why it's there.
That's why it's dated.
Thank you for your explanation.
Resolved to approve the intermunicipal agreement with the Irvington Union Free School District for the VIP program from July 1st, 2022 to June 30, 2023. And authorize the village administrator to execute the agreement. I'll make a motion, I can have a second. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Approval of consulting agreement with Content Engineering.
So this is, well, as you know, it's a renewal of their contract. And this agreement is, the rates are consistent with what his rates are, or what their rates are currently. The agreement is a bit more on the perpetual side. So rather than have one-year contracts and, you know, and then renew it for a year and then come back to the board every time, we're doing an agreement that's perpetual and allows them to update their rates as long as we agree on an annual basis. Obviously, you can terminate the agreement anytime you want, so it's not as though, you know, you're stuck with Han Engineering forever. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. If we did the same type of a contract with the engineers for the dam that you just approved, and, you know, we're going to be working with them for what we expect to be a long time, but if they don't if they don't live up to what they're supposed to be doing, obviously we can terminate. There's always clauses for that. That's it.
Resolved to approve consulting agreement 2023-11 with James J. Hahn Engineering PC for professional engineering services and authorize the village administrator to execute said contract. Make a motion, may I have a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Next, approval of consulting agreement 2023-12 Spatially New York LLC.
Yeah, so interesting one. So we, in the process of transitioning our building department records, one of the tie-ins, one of the disciplines that we need is someone that is capable with GIS, Geographic Information System programs and data, because a lot of the new cloud-based permit system is map-based, you know, where you seek out properties and you can, it's all tied together. We have an option. We have either use Han Engineering at a bit higher rate, or use a person who's recently retired from the county, who was the head of their GIS department, a guy named Sam Weir, who we've worked with for years. And so Sam is very knowledgeable. Obviously, that was his specialty at the county, and his rates are less, frankly. So we need some work from him. It's not a lot in terms of how much we'll be using him, but we really do need his expertise. We don't have it here in the village in terms of how these GIS systems work. And that's it. So we have, it's kind of a blanket contract, but we obviously have to remain within whatever budget lines we may have, but we want to get this person under contract.
Excellent. Resolved to approve a consulting agreement with Spatially New York LLC for consulting services for the purpose of developing village infrastructure and asset mapping and GIS viewer. And authorize the village administrator to execute such agreement. Make a motion, I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approval of retainer agreement with McCarthy Fingar LLP.
So this item is, this is an attorney that specializes in the negotiation and renegotiation of cable TV franchise agreements. We have a franchise agreement with Verizon that expired in 2016, and Verizon has essentially refused to negotiate an extension to that franchise since 2016 and through the pandemic. My guess is they were dragging their feet because the landscape's changed a lot in video delivery. And so they probably were trying to understand that better. Frankly, we need to understand that better. But this attorney specializes in this field, so that's very important for us to have someone that knows what's going on in that industry. Separately, just to point out, the agreement is there's 4 other villages, 3 of them in Greenberg, one's Briarcliff, that are joining in on this particular contract. So we're all using this attorney, and we're all negotiating the same franchise agreement on a joint basis. So it is really an efficient way of doing it, because we're basically paying 1/5 of the bill for working on the same shell of an agreement. Now, obviously, at the end, there'll be some Irvington-specific things that need to get negotiated, but that's really more towards the end. But the vast majority of the agreement is standard language that applies to all of the 5 villages. So this was just pointing out that this was a really good effort from the Village Officials Committee to get together on these issues. It turns out, as I said, that 3 of our villages here in Greenberg have agreements that expired around the same time, and all of us need to renew. And now Briarcliff liked it so much they jumped on. So
Yeah, here it looks like all the letter was to all the village officials, all the villages.
yeah, but not everyone's on the same cycle, so not everyone's negotiating just yet. So but it would probably apply to everyone eventually. Yeah.
And what do we mean by franchise? I'm lost on this.
Right, so I can't recite to you the letter of the law. All I can say is that if you want to deliver cable TV service to residents in Irvington, you have to have a franchise agreement. You have to have an agreement with the village that allows you to put your equipment in the right of way, which we own. And so that's the franchise agreement. In past history, there only used to be one cable TV provider. It was Altice or Cablevision before that. So we do have an agreement with Altice. That one doesn't expire yet for us. But Verizon came along, which was pretty unique at the time, and they became a second cable TV provider to provide competition, actually. And so we needed to have an agreement with them, or they needed to have an agreement with us in order to deliver that video. So, and it's regulated, and this is where it's over my head. All of this is regulated by the New York State Public Service Commission. So these franchise agreements all have to get approved by New York State when they're negotiated. It's a complicated process. So to say that I need a specialized attorney for this is an understatement. But it's got to happen. So.
Resolved to approve the retainer agreement 2023-13 with the firm of McCarthy Fincar for the legal services related to cable television franchise negotiations, and authorize the village administrator to execute said agreement. I'll make a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Next up is approval of the 2022 Village of Irvington Volunteer Ambulance Corps Service Award listing. This is the official blessing of this submitted by IMAC to allow them to participate in their retirement program. Questions? Otherwise,
I'm always, when I get this lists like this, what do we, I don't know. We have no way of knowing if this is, I'm sure it's right.
to me, it's like, it's more how many active members do they have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
You're right, you don't have a way of knowing, but the process involves them having to post this information within their building so that their membership can see it. So there's a little bit of self-checking there.
So if someone had an objection, they could raise it.
Exactly. And that, I think, would have happened before it got to us, but there may be a posting that happens after you approve it somehow. All this is laid out in New York State law, so I couldn't tell you why, but I'm just telling you have to do it.
Yeah, I know. It's just weird, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, you're right. I totally agree.
Resolved to approve the 2022 service listing for volunteers of the Irvington Volunteer Ambulance Corps to be used for the elective service award plan. Motion, do I have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Reports of board, standing committees, and officers. Start with you, Larry.
So, short update from the building department. They are pretty busy with planning board and ARB applications. They're continuing to work on the new computer system. And this month they're working on the every 3-year fire inspection. So basically the state requires fire inspections. Depending on the type of building and occupants, some happen every year, some happen every 3 years. So they're working on the every 3-year ones now. That's all I got.
Great.
So I was present along with Brian and Larry at the swearing in of the new fire officers, and just a congratulations. I've spoken to the new chief, Jimmy Ruffler, and we're doing this together. This past Saturday, for the first time in 10 years, the spring haircut occurred. One of those things that was taken out of the budget. 2009 out of the budget, and it took until Saturday for it to come back, thanks to the PBA, who provided significant funding for that. But I was there, I know Arlene was there. It's a lot of fun, great turnout, lots of kids, and just a good 45 minutes of mayhem and candy and eggs.
And the Easter Bunny.
And the Easter Bunny, right. This Saturday, the invasive vine cleaning will happen in Irvington Woods Park. That's one of those reclassified spaces.
Sign up on Community Pass, the 2 sessions, one from 10 to 12 and one from 12 to 2.
And the 10th anniversary of the O'Hara Nature Center will be celebrated on May 13th. It's a Saturday at the O'Hara Nature Center. More information to follow. That's it.
Arlene?
So I have a report from the Jack Nelson's department. I'm not gonna read it, trying to like to something great, but you know, clearly they're doing lots of work. Repairing catch basins, guardrails, and hazardous trees. And then Charlotte Binns with the G. I have it GPT. I'll have to say the words in my head to not mess up the letters. But they're planning Earth Day activities that will take place on April 23rd at the farmers market. And if people are interested in getting involved in the activities and volunteering, they can email Charlotte at cbins, B-I-N-S, at arlingtonnewyork.gov. The other thing that's moving along very nicely is the Bulldog Gallery Committee. The Bulldogs are almost all ready. There are going to be 18 Bulldogs along Main Street this summer. Businesses have sponsored them. They're starting to get pictures, and artists are being matched with businesses. It's super exciting. It's going to be very cool. So that's going to be happening this summer. It's good, hopefully by the end of May. You'll start seeing them around Main Street and down Main Street. And other than the PBA, obviously, some of the co-sponsor piece, the fantastic Easter egg hunts.
Brian, if I may,
Sure.
CJ and I are working with Charlotte Binn to put together another battery-operated equipment day at the Nature Center. We'll open up to everyone. We know that's a very important issue in the community. We're basically going to try to mimic what we did years ago, and with the advancements with the equipment, we want to show the public, what's available to them. We haven't picked a date yet. It's likely going to be in June.
Cool. And I think with the landscapers as well, the intention was to try to have some of the businesses there as well.
Yeah. So you segue into the administrative report.
Yeah, actually, I don't have a report. My report was this agenda, but it was quite a good one. But I will be giving a quick update at the next meeting, just on the progress or what the status is of the stage in Matheson Park, just so you have a preview of that. But more to come.
Let's go to treasurer's report.
Once this budget is over, the capital budget requests have gone out to the department, so they will start working on those. So something to look forward to.
Can't wait. Village Attorney's report?
Yep.
Public comment? Rick? Anyone at home, Larry?
No, there's
Listen to the buzzing.
no one on.
We're all deaf now. Yeah. Action items? Pass the budget next week?
Yeah, well, that's up to you, but, no.
What's the deadline to pass the
We
budget?
have till May 1st.
May 1st, yeah, you have lots of time, don't worry.
So I will make a motion to adjourn. Do I got a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
You know what, I just wanted to let you guys know, in the Agabino letter, how he said that I told him to go to court. I never tell anybody. But
And you also said you should represent him?
So I don't know where that came from, unless you can't appeal to the.
No, listen, the answer is what you gave us, which is we went back to our expert
Yeah.
to say, just make sure that you see this recommendation and
Early day tomorrow.
Because the vegetarian is even harder, and it's like, I don't know, I'm ready, tomorrow night's the first dinner I can eat again, and it's like, I'll make a fucking
Coming out of it.
No. I
Like, oh my God, I'm gonna die of hunger. I was like, let me
sidewalks, right? And it's a perfect glass of wine.
It was like, shit. Really hard. I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
No, you absolutely should.
It's the aggravation, that's what they're, that's like.